Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A series. We've been interviewing filmmakers for the last 5 years on Zoom, thanks to the pandemic. And with that, we've been interviewing over 150, so we're really very proud of that. Today, we have three filmmakers here to talk about their short documentaries. We have Thomas Lennon here to talk about Retreat, Marine Field Station. We have Zuzelin Martin, who we know as Zuzi, is going to be talking about her terrific short documentary, Harlem to Harvard. And Vinit Parmar's film, Down the Line, is a documentary about the ballots in New Jersey. So we're going to be talking about films that have a Jersey connection, since Thomas Lennon is a professor at Rutgers. Vinit Parmar is a professor of cinema filmmaking at Brooklyn College. Zuzi Martin is a Rutgers graduate who's made a number of films. We showed one of her previous documentaries, Craving Cuba, a few years ago. So welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So I guess the best way to start this is to have you tell us about your film and how you got involved with making it. Vinit, you go first, since you're closest to me on the Hollywood squares here.
Sure. Well, it started out as any other odd story does start out.
Mm.
Well, my high school best friend lives in Jersey,
Mm.
and he texted me a picture and some data about what's happening in Jersey on the ballot. Said, "Hey, take a look at this. What is going on here?" And I said, "Well, it's only a simple ballot. What's wrong with that?"
Mm.
And he said, "Well, there's something. Look deeper. Do some research because there's some shenanigans, or I think that there's some shenanigans." So I started reaching out, doing some research, and I'm a former lawyer.
Oh.
So I was able to read a lot of the cases in the last couple of years and the challenges to the current ballot system. And what I found surprised me. So I began to talk and do a little research on the ground, talking to voters in New Jersey, just asking questions. And then talk to lawyers who are specialized in this field, talk to NGO organizers, working party family participants, and other folks who had lost against what we call the New Jersey line, which is the when you vote down the line. And they told me their stories. And that all sort of seemed to chime in. I talked to professors too, and I said, wow, there's something going on here. And maybe uh, we had to get the film out at a certain specific time within 6 months.
Mm.
If I had greater time to work on it, I think I'd make it a longer documentary. But that's why it ended up being a short film focusing only on two folks.
And if I remember correctly, there's a Rutgers connection in your film too, because you interview a Rutgers professor too.
Right.
Very cool. Susie, you go next. Tell us about your terrific film.
Well, thank you for having me. Harlem to Harvard. Usually my films and the stories I tell have a personal angle, right? This one fell into my lap, and it was such a beautiful coincidence. I met a board member through a friend of a friend who runs this amazing program in Harlem called the Wildly Scholars Program. And he mentored my son who was applying to high schools. And before you know it, he said to me, Zuzi, you make videos, right? He goes, can you make a video for my website? Which actually, oh gosh, I feel bad saying this, but the website looks like it was from the 1980s. It didn't have any, it could use a little help. So I said, all right. I go, please let me make a short documentary about this story, which is about a professor in Harlem, excuse me, a teacher in Harlem who was quite eccentric, used to hang out with James Baldwin, Lena Horne, and hanging out in Paris, came home one summer and realized his top students were being lost to the streets. And like many of the films here we're talking about today, he couldn't just stay there and do nothing. And he looked around and thought, where did the leaders of this country go to high school? Where is generational impact made? And he thought, okay, the most elite schools in the country are the boarding schools. That's where the wealthy send their children. That's where the historical, families that run the country and the world send their children. He didn't see any brown or black faces at those schools. over the last 60 years, he sent over 600 students to the top and most elite schools in the country because of this program that he started. So that's what Harlem to Harlem is about. And I was really honored to be able to tell a little part of the story, which connects the past to a girl from Union, New Jersey, right now, going through the process. So it was really an honor to make the film, and that's what it's about.
Very cool. The personal angle is really amazing, and your film is so timely now, given all the conundrums created by the Trump administration for
Well,
Harvard and for
yeah.
minorities. So
It's interesting you should say that, because obviously this was made before that, but almost to the day I finished the film, I got it back from the editor like right after inauguration, and the conversation had certainly shifted.
yeah.
And the film takes on another tone. It wasn't my intention. My intention was to make a film about possibility and about the power of what humans can do with sheer will. Which again, I love that the films we're talking about today have that that line. So
Very cool.
Can I jump in before I talk
Sure,
about
of course.
my film? Before I talk about my film.
Sure.
Sorry about that. Before I talk about my film, one of the things that struck me is that so many great African American men sort of fled the United States and went to Paris, and it was like, I got to get away from this thing. I got to get away from all of this mess. And I want to be an artist, and the way I can be an artist is by getting away from this thing. And that was certainly on Richard Wright's mind. It was certainly on James Baldwin's mind. I don't know enough about Lena Horne to say, but and then there's this like magnetic pull of like, wait a minute, is this really where I belong? Can I really get away, or can I achieve so much more by coming back? And I think for people like Baldwin, who I know a little bit about, it was a very complicated choice, because it's like, in Paris, I could just write about whatever the hell I want to write about. If I come back to the United States, I join a movement, I join an effort, and it involves some sacrifice in that, in terms of their own individual path. So fascinating as like a backdrop to that story. And then, of course, this young girl who wouldn't have been admitted to Exeter or Andover or Choate all those years ago. So, the evolution of time. Anyhow, super interesting.
Very cool. Tell us about your film, Thomas.
Well, we all have serendipity, right? So, and serendipity is a big part of documentary filmmaking. And I teach a very odd class at Rutgers called the Documentary Film Lab. I don't really know of any other class quite like it in the United States. I'm sure there is one somewhere, but I've never run into it. And the idea is that we make actual films that are expected to have a life. These are not student films. These are films that are expected to have a life outside of the university. And thanks to Al Nigrin, this now is launched at least outside of it's pushing its way out into the world. But students are expected to participate in it as crew, as shooters, as editors, as all of this stuff. So it's a kind of like, failure is not an option. We're going to make this film and you're going to do X or Y. It sort of replicates a little bit the world that I lived in for 40 years. I ran a production company for 30 years. And, people work as a collective. Film is often still a collective medium. So I heard about this outpost in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey, drove down there. It was so beautiful that I had to find an excuse to set a story there. And sure enough, there was such a story. And it was these scientists who were used to kind of not pontificating, but pronouncing future impact for other people, suddenly finding themselves in the dilemma that they're used to watching other people. As one of the scientists said to me off camera, said, I'm not really used to being my own data point It's like they're used to looking out, and suddenly they have a problem, which is, can they stay where they are? From a research point of view, it's so much better to be right at the water's edge. But at the same time, the land in New Jersey is sinking, the water is rising, and it becomes trickier and trickier for them to stay. So what I liked was the angle of the scientists having to look at their own decision making rather than being objective parties talking about Al's problem or Thomas Lennon's problem or Susie's problem. And indeed, I loved it, and the students loved it, and I had a blast. I had a blast making it, and I'm happy with the final piece.
All three of your films are just really insightful, imaginative. They're obviously labors of love as well. Would you like to ask each other questions about the process? Why don't you start, Vinit, since you're next in line?
Sure, sure. So, for both of you, I think, when I have a question in that when you start out, you have an idea, but there's an evolution that takes place. Because as we all know in documentary, serendipity can mean, positive things and negative things. So things go awry or things don't come out as expected. What were the twists and turns in the process of making it, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I can speak about something wonderful that happened that I tell people all the time. As a documentary filmmaker, I think the most important thing is gaining the trust of your subjects, right? So we were going about our way doing our interviews on a very, very limited budget and all of that. And it wasn't until the very end that Genesis, which is the young woman that I follow for a part of the film, she's very put together in front of the camera. I mean, she could out lecture each and every one of us here on a stage. She's got a powerful diction and she's calm and she's very well put together. And she took cell phone footage video, which you saw the film. So her cell phone footage video, she told her mom that she was okay with sharing it with me, which as a teenager, it was so vulnerable and not put together and so beautiful. And for me, that combined with the old footage of Mr. Plummer, which died 10 years ago. He never met Genesis, but his dream, she is his dream living still. So when her and her mother trusted me to say, here, you can use it. Like, yeah. It was such a gift.
Yeah.
So that was something I did not expect.
Right.
And I originally wanted to follow another one of the girls because she was an actor. And I thought, oh, this is going to be good for her. Let me put her in the documentary, thinking ahead on her career. And she couldn't do it. And then Genesis said yes. And it's beautiful. She's been on another panel with me already. And I really want to use it as an opportunity to support her. So that was a twist that I didn't expect. And it just reminded me of what I preach all the time: the power of trust, the power of authenticity. And like you said, Professor, serendipity, right? I didn't know this footage existed until.
Yeah. So I have a theory about that, because I've been doing this, I'm a lot older than, I bring up the average age of this gathering by quite a bit. And so I've developed a theory about luck. I think that luck is unbelievably important in documentary, and Susie's story just supports that. But it's not just the cliche about how luck comes to those who are prepared. That's true too. You stumble into something and you rock and roll. But if your approach is wrong, if you're trying to push the story in a direction that fits your own preconception, but doesn't quite hit the mark, you never get lucky. And when you find that you're going with the story, that you're right where you should be on the story, then you get lucky. And it is luck, but it has to do with being with the grain. You're cutting with the grain, not against the grain. And I have so I started out, making work for hire, and I would be handed a hypothesis, and I wasn't really at liberty to. And then you would try to push, like, okay, I'm going to make this person my central character, but the person didn't quite fit because the story was kind of off, and then everything doesn't click that way. Once you're aligned with the story, then great things happen.
And I can add to that, Thomas, in that I had this, I mean, it's something a little bit not as advanced as your sort of theory, is, well, as filmmakers, we just need to show up, meaning just be there, be around, be present, be connected to our participants who are giving their time and listening. And that open-mindedness, I think, and just in that sense, keeping a finger on the pulse of the moment. For example, if I were to answer my own question, part of the way that the story began to become a little bit more deeper was I started following at that time Representative from the third district, Andy Kim, because he was also blocked or being blocked being on the ballot in the proper way. They were going to put him all the way in the corner. And so I began to follow, and then he filed an injunction, federal injunction, and that also then, gave the film a little bit more of a credibility, a national sort of relevance. So those things and following his story and including his story in the film gives it a little bit more of a lift. So I totally agree with you. I think that, yeah.
But it was because your story was legitimate and important that you got lucky.
That's right.
Because Kim was in a jam and he could feel the opportunity, and so it's like, are you aligned or not? Are you aligned with your story or not?
I'm glad you brought up Mr. Kim. Can I jump to a comment about Down the Line for a moment?
Sure.
So the film was really, I loved it, and God, I love New Jersey so much. I haven't properly lived there in a while, but I'm always there because I love it so much. The stories are so tied into the fabric of what New Jersey is. So thank you for this film festival. So Kim, he was the point that gave me hope, because I was being dragged down into the frustration and the injustice that many of us actually feel when it comes to politics. You feel like there's such an overwhelming mountain on top of behind the individual. What can we do? What can I do to change this that is so fixed? So you feel that frustration, and that very often leads to just disillusionment and giving up. And it was when you brought in, when you shared what Andy Kim did, like that is the possibility. That's what we're capable of. And it takes one person to not give up and to stand up. So I loved that part of the film because it gave me hope, even though it's still tied up in the court system, right? That's the moment.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, I totally agree. That's kind of like I didn't want to end with a negative note because we want to give New Jersey folks, and across the nation a sense of what we can do as normal voters. But the problem is, after the injunction and after the court win and after all of that, New Jersey has gone backwards, and they've created a law or passed a bill that allows for down the line as a formal process, which is really unbelievable.
How the hell did they justify that?
That's their right. They're saying that legally that's their right to politically align and on First Amendment right to politically align with anyone that they want to for their opportunity to make deals. So or connect with
it's an affirmation of boss politics, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't call it the Jersey machine by accident.
Yeah.
Right.
Being part of the system and seeing what goes on now, Andy Kim was a voice of reason, but there's still a lot uphill struggle to kind of find that solace. But
Well, it has fired the group, fired, fired up in a
yeah,
positive way by giving hope to folks, even after the setback. All these NGOs and the voters are much more aware of the problem, and
yeah,
that was really a big problem in the past. It's
Right.
people are not
Right.
aware. Yeah,
Right. Even you took a little while to understand the importance of it.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. I want to say one thing about the hope um, thing. It's the most natural impulse in the world to not want to leave uh, your audience without sort of an opportunity not just to hope, but also maybe even to act.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's also tricky because I remember I read this book about climate change, and at the end of the like, and then towards the last chapter, she said, this is the point where I'm supposed to make a turn and show that all of this can be turned around, but it's not that kind of a book. And I also sort of like we have to be careful. We have to check our earnest and proper desire, and that's sometimes in tension with the story, and then you sort of have to decide which, that's our job, to decide then which is the true thing. And so I struggle with that sometimes, and I think that documentary filmmakers do. Like after the first election of the president who shall receive no name, all the documentary filmmakers we'd all get together, and then at every meeting you would say, well, now that our work is more important than ever, blah 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 blah. Well, I'm not sure that that's true. I think it's, in a way, what we're grappling with is the limits of
What you can do.
media communication, and that actually maybe we're entering this weird era where we're sort of post information in some strange way. And that's something we have to stare at, because we're documentary filmmakers. We look at stuff, even the
Right.
stuff that doesn't fit.
I want to add, if I may, to what Thomas, you make a great point about hope. And I guess the responsibility that we have is actually tell the real story, right? The authentic story. And I think um, I was just listening actually to a podcast this morning on Freakonomics. It's one of the podcasts I listen to while I prepare breakfast or whatever. And there's an interview with the documentary filmmaker Mr. Cutler, and he said it really nicely, where he said something like, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but he basically says our job as documentary filmmakers is to look at the drama of the actual life that we're trying to portray and do it in an authentic way with an aesthetic vision.
Mm.
Being that the drama of life is this process of struggle and that's the human nature, the struggle. And through that struggle, if there's a chance to show that there's the success at the end, which is like the end of the climax or something, the positive end, then it happens, and then we show it. If it doesn't happen, it's okay not to show it.
That's right.
So just be truthful.
Very, very true. If no pun intended. We need to share screen now since we're running out of time, but so many great points. And folks, you absolutely have to come to this screening where all three films will be. So actually, there's two screenings. Zuzi and Thomas's film are part of a documentary, short documentary block. And Vinit's film is going to be screened at another date, which I will show you right now. If I can share screen. And all right. So this is our homepage, and normally everything would be here. Let me see if I can move this a little bit, make it bigger. This is our homepage, njfilmfest.com, and normally everything would be here, but since the pandemic, we've partnered with Eventive because our festival is a hybrid. we developed this audience for people watching films. We have a lady from Oklahoma who watches everything since the pandemic. So we didn't want to eliminate people like that from getting access to these mostly humanist films. We're a humanist film festival, and I think your films certainly fit that bill. So what you need to do is click on this tickets info button, which brings you to our main website, which is at Eventive, which is our streaming provider. And at the very top, you'll see 5 buttons, and we'll get to them in a second. But if you scroll down, you can get information about where to park, the location of the screening. And you can even register to park for free at the university lots. But then once you're done with that, you want to absolutely go up and push schedule, which is a way to be able to see the entire schedule in a very vanilla way. And the first documentary program is on Sunday, June 1st, where Marine Field Station will be screening, along with Zuzi's film Harlem to Harvard, and 3 other really great documentaries. There's also Rutgers connection here. Victor Witkowski went to Mason Gross, and he's now teaching up in New Hampshire. I think he's at Dartmouth.
And I want to give a shout out to Bird Feeder, which is a very special film. I'm sorry Daniel couldn't be here today.
Yeah, me
really
too.
Lovely piece of work.
Yeah, all the films that we show have something. We don't show any junk. We show really good films, and that's one of the things that we're really proud of. So if you keep scrolling down, you'll find that we have a lot of films. We're showing 33 of them. And down the line will be screened on Saturday, June 7th, which is with another series of short films and documentaries. You can check out the entire program at this website. Once you're done with that, go to tickets, which is where you buy tickets for the screenings. And as you make your way down, you'll see Harlem to Harvard here. You can buy tickets by pushing Learn More or Pre-Order Now. You need to register once to buy tickets at our site. It takes 30 seconds. And once you've done that, you'll be able to never do it again and be able to get access to all of the programming that we have. So you would click on these, and that's how you could purchase tickets. You can go back to festival site, click on Film Guide, and there you can find out about each and every film, like Bird Feeder is a really charming film about urban bird feeding, and it's so much more than that. I think all of the films that we show have multiple lines of inquiry. Marine Field Station, this is an overview shot of the location where Thomas filmed with his students. And then we have Harlem to Harvard. I always love this poster. And you learn more about Edward Plummer on Susie's film here too. So once you're done with that, you can go back to menu and hit the welcome page. You want to get access to all of the programs. It's $120 for an all access pass. If you want to see everything, you absolutely want to save money this way. It's like 50% off if you get an all access pass. Individual programs are $15 each. And the great thing about our festival is you can watch online during the day and then come in the evening to the in-person screening because they're shown online and in person. The online version is 24 hours on the show date. And then the in-person screenings either at 5 o'clock or at 7 o'clock in the evening. So we have some crazy people that watch the film during the day and then come and watch it again with our audience, and they ask questions to the filmmakers because there will also be a Q&A session for the live screenings as well. I want to thank you all for joining us here today, and I look forward to seeing you all in person at the screenings. And want to say thanks for your tremendous work. All the films that we're showing are really special, and thanks so much for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.